Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Today we are chatting to Caleb and Donna all about getting clear about what you want in your relationship both now and into the future. Things we touch on are living an intentional lifestyle, backing your partner and hitting your goals faster, and some of the tools and skills for a thriving relationship. Now let's get into it.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast, everyone. Today we're welcoming Donna and Caleb. Donna is a transformational and business coach, and Caleb is a coach specialising in sales. They've been together for 3 years and spent the last 18 months jumping around Southeast Asia. They're now in New Zealand running a global online business. They both love travel and all things luxury. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here.
I don't, all things luxury, yeah, that's makes it sound really pretentious. But I guess we are kind of like, part of the reason why we love traveling through Asia is everything's just so affordable. You can have these incredible experiences that back home you'd pay, through the teeth, and then you do it in Asia and it's just, your money goes so much further.
So to kick off, how did the two of you meet?
Well, the official story is Donna was searching for some coaches to basically lock down, is how I understand it.
And this is why I looked at him the way that I did, because that's not how it went at all.
So she was looking for some successful coaches. She said she just wanted to interview them to help grow her business, but I knew that she was on the hunt. So she put a call out. Yeah. And I was like, man, she got mad thirsty vibes going on. And so I asked her out for a coffee, and then I thought it was a date, but apparently
I didn't.
She thought it was a business meeting, and then she found out.
Coach, having a chat.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And she found out about, halfway through that I thought it was a date, and she had red wine teeth at that stage and had been laughing and oversharing, and then that was one thing led to another, and that was pretty much it.
I was like, there's no way that this guy wants another date with me, surely.
It's funny, that's kind of the thing that disarmed her. She wasn't looking for a relationship. And because she didn't think that it was a date, we had a real conversation, like what most people who are meeting each other for dating purposes would have. In 4 weeks, we had it on the first night. So that's kind of been the theme of our relationship. It's been, let's just say the thing. What's wrong? What's the thing? And let's just say it and deal with it. And I think, kind of from the first meeting, because one of the things you asked about was values. They were kind of established early by how we were being.
I think one of the things that really attracted me about Caleb was that I dated a lot of guys where the communication was very kind of skewish and it was not very straightforward. And so when I met Caleb, he was just literally within 2 weeks of meeting me, he was like, I like you. I want you to be my girlfriend. And then another 2 or 3 weeks later, he's like, I've fallen in love with you. That's it. I'm in. And I was like, this is just so refreshing, just to have somebody who says it how it is, doesn't worry about, what if something happens or anything like that, just is very open and honest. And, that's very much how I am too. I'm pretty much straight down the line, which some people love and some people don't. And I think that that's one of the things that works really well in our relationship.
I love that. So you were the first one to drop the L-bomb, Caleb?
Yeah, I was pretty clear. I'd had a relationship before that just shown me how, what I didn't want relationships to be like. And not because of the person, but because of who I was being in the relationship. It just sort of highlighted to me how much growth that I needed to go through personally to be ready to actually have someone as an equal partner, rather than a child dynamic with a motherly partner who looks after you. And so after that relationship, I'd gone through a ton of internal stuff. I probably spent 6 months prior to meeting Donna clearing out all of my unresolved baggage. Not that it's all gone by any means, but that was a focal point, because I was like, now I need to work on myself. And then it kind of hit this point where I was like, and the business had blown up. I'd left my job. I did 90 grand in 90 days and the business blew up. Yeah. And I was kind of like, man, it's lonely, I'm happy to be alone, but fuck, it's boring. You know, like I'm crushing it in business, and there's no one to like talk to or like celebrate with, or you know, if I want to go somewhere and fly somewhere and travel, because that was the next thing I was thinking about. I was like, it'd just be me, and yeah. So it was kind of at that point that's when I was seriously thinking about it. And then I met Donna, and she just had all the characteristics.
So, like a year before I met Caleb, I wrote a list that was called my ideal life list. So it had all different components of my life, and one of them was relationship, and it had literally all of the characteristics and things that I'd want from a partner. And Caleb had something very similar, which we didn't discover until we were already together. And then by that point, we had shared those lists with each other, and they were very on point for each other. You know, it was very much Caleb and very much me.
That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Because you've obviously both independently gone through the introspective look at like, okay, well, if I'm really honest, what is it that I'm looking for? You know, and that's I guess, such a big step to even get clear about what you want before meeting that person.
And even more than that, it was when I looked at my list, I looked at it as in, what do I want? But then also, who am I being to attract that sort of person? And there were certain things at that point in time that I certainly was not being to attract what I wanted to have in my life. So I really had to step it up for myself before I could meet Caleb, which the interesting thing is that I did step it up for myself. And then I was kind of like, man, I don't really care if I have a relationship or not, because I was really, really happy. Like, I just started my business and things were going so well that I was almost like, if somebody comes in right now, like, is this going to be the right timing? And it almost was a little bit of like, it scared me a little bit when he did come, because it was something that I wanted for so long, but also I'd finally got into that space of just feeling really balanced and grounded and happy. Which I guess is, you know, that old kind of thing that people say, you know, just when you're not looking for it is when it comes along.
How did you go through that process of actually coming up with what you wanted your ideal lifestyle to look like? Was there, because you obviously both did it individually, I guess, without knowing it before you met. So how did you go through that process?
Well, there was two. So I think most people fall in love with the idea of being in a relationship. And they kind of don't really care who they're in the relationship with. They just love the idea of being in love. And I think that's probably the first problem. If you're in love with the idea of being in a relationship, then you'll tolerate behaviors that don't like help you or serve you or like allow you to flourish. And so you end up settling for someone who is emotionally mismatched to you. And they live in a delusion of, oh, one day it'll get better. I'll be able to fix her, or I'll be able to fix him. And that's how most people get into the relationship, is they just kind of fall into it and be like, you know what, being with this person is better than being alone.
Yeah, that fall in love with the person, not the potential.
Yeah. In love with the idea of being in love rather than, you know, knowing what love is. And that being said, I don't think you know what love is before you fall in love. I think you just have your best idea. But I think you've got to start the process of introspection and looking at, you know, what have the patterns been in my last relationships to show you the contrast of what didn't work and what you don't want. Because then you can figure out what you do want. And then the second part that everybody misses is, who do I need to be in order to have that person, right? Who would that person fall in love with? And if you're not that person, then that's why they're not here. And so that's one thing. The second thing was that exercise that we did. Do you remember at Old Mates? Remember that?
Ah, yes.
That was that one.
So,
yeah.
You know, every so often we'll sit down and we'll really evaluate what it is that we want to see happening in our relationship. And this is where I think a lot of couples actually get caught, because like we do a little bit of work with couples from time to time. And one of the things that we notice about them is that they don't actually sit down and reevaluate, you know, where they're at in their relationship. And that's something that we tend to do, you know, quite often whenever we notice a big change. So like, for instance, you know, before we went traveling, or even now that we've decided to kind of settle down now and, you know, plant roots again, we sat down and we did the same thing. We kind of looked at what the energy was of where it is that we wanted to live. So
we did this exercise where we both separately wrote down on a piece of paper, what do you want life to be like 5 years from now? And like, we didn't look at each other's answers. And we did this probably a year into.
It was before we went to Bali.
That's the one I was
talking about.
Yeah. And so we were at this cafe, we are having coffee. I was like, I got a great idea. Let's write down what we want in the next 5 years and let's just compare notes. And we were lucky in the sense that it was all, well, no, I don't think lucky, because I think that's a consequence of the first step. So, like, if you're super
Yeah.
clear about what you want, then you're naturally going to find someone who's a values match, because you've already decided in advance, this is what I want, and I'm not going to tolerate any less, and I'm going to be that person. And that's kind of like the holy trinity. And we were sitting in this cafe, and we both wrote down this whole thing of what we wanted life to be like 5 years from now, and then we shared, and it was exactly the same. Donna wanted travel, children, all of the milestones were the same. And one of the things that we see all the time is like people just don't talk about those things. Like, is marriage on your cards and on the cards in the next 3 years? And most people are scared of that conversation. Like, just because you talk about it doesn't mean you have to do it. Like, it's just you have to get an idea of where you're going. Otherwise, that time's going to pass. And if it hasn't gone the direction that you want, you'll have resentment. And we end up talking to couples that are on the precipice of like, fuck you, all this stuff. And it's like 20 years of resentment that's so hard to let go of. And, it's so much harder if you don't say anything for such a long period of time. You just sow these seeds, this garden of resentment in your stomach. And then all of a sudden it just comes out, and this is probably the root cause of infidelity and massive fights and divorce and all that stuff, is because people just aren't fucking talking to each other.
Yeah, I think that like one of the big lessons that I guess I learned in the last couple of years was like, what is resentment? And it kind of comes from that space when an expectation hasn't been met. If an expectation hasn't been met, it creates resentment. But if you've never communicated that expectation in the first place, you've set yourself and your partner up for failure because they can't possibly meet an expectation that hasn't been communicated. So I think it's really awesome that you've both been able to, really clearly articulate your expectations for, I guess, both your relationship and your life.
Yeah, so we kind of and the other thing we've realized is it tends to happen in blocks of 3. Happy to be wrong. If this isn't the case for you, can you let us know? Because it seems to be a pattern where we can envision further than that. But the one that seems to be the easiest or the change period that we go through seems to be in a period of 3. So 2016, I became a coach, and the goal was travel through Southeast Asia, build a business, have a wonderful partner. And by 2019, August, pretty much exactly 3 years to the date, I was on a flight over to Hawaii. I just signed a client on the phone,
in the air.
In the air. They had Wi-Fi, so I was doing messenger sales, and I signed a client in the air. And I looked across, Donna was there, and it was a rough flight. Like, we flew economy, and it was 12 hours, and we vowed never again will we fly long haul economy. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is it. This was the thing that I started 3 years ago in June 2016 that I wanted, which was interesting because that then triggered a whole new developmental cycle of like, well, now that I got what I want, now what? And part of that is we had to then look at the next 3 years. Like, what is it for us in the next 3 years? And we realized it's like, well, we actually don't want to travel anymore. Like, we'd really love to go to Sunshine Coast, get set up, start a family, that kind of stuff, put some roots down. And so this is, this kind of theory that I have is like things work in lots of 3s. And like if a couple's experiencing stagnation or like, the spark's gone, the first thing I would look at is what's your 3-year goal? Like, because you probably already hit it, right? And you've been living in this limbo space of the honeymoon period is like coming to an end. And now it's like you've achieved everything that you wanted when you set this goal 3 years ago to find this person. Now what? And that can either be scary or like enjoyable. Be like, oh, look what we can create together.
Yeah, one of our very early episodes, we had Keith Abraham on the show, and he specializes in goal setting. And this was something that he was talking about is that, couples need something to collaborate on. They need something that they're working towards. And that sense of fulfillment actually comes from the progress, not from hitting the goal. So if you continually feel like you're making progress, then you're in a great space.
Yeah. And I mean, full transparency for us as well, like when we did kind of hit that in August last year, I don't think either of us really actually kind of realized that. Like we realized that like, hey, yeah, we're happy we've hit all these goals. But it wasn't until COVID had hit and then we were back in New Zealand, which we didn't expect to be. And we kind of went, oh, hang on a second, what does our life look like now? Like, what do we actually want? And so it was kind of forced upon us in a sense when we got here. And I think that that's one of the things as well is like, you know, you can know all of this stuff, like we know this stuff, but even then sometimes it can take you by surprise. And it certainly did us, I think.
And I think sometimes it does kind of take that asteroid to hit to make you reflect on what you actually really want and what your goals are, where you're heading. And so I guess that obviously was the case for you guys, that you had a plan, you've been able to achieve a lot of things, and then it kind of took this asteroid.
Took the universe to give you a little shake to go, now what?
That's it.
Well, we'd planned to, you know, spend the rest of the year in Bali. We were going to get married in Bali at the end of that year and then go to Europe and travel some more. That's the plan that we'd kind of set. And then we hadn't really reflected on it, like through this reflection process that we're talking about. And then COVID gave us a massive opportunity to be like, hang on a minute, is this actually what we want? Like, do we actually want this? And it had changed. And I think that's a really like important lesson for couples is be like, it's okay for your plan to change. Just talk about it. Because I was worried that I was going to make Donna go home early, and Donna was worried that she was going to make me go home early. And it was just the elephant in the room that we hadn't talked about. And she's like, I'm sick of travel. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. So am I. Like, I really want to go home.
It's like running businesses, like both of us running businesses as well, and travel, that's a lot of uncertainty to take. And we're really lucky that we do have such great communication styles with each other, because it's required when you both deal with lots of uncertainty, not just with business, but with traveling all the time as well. Like there were loads of times where we'd rocked into a place, and like Boracay, for example, we went to Boracay for a month and we lived there. And
the place that we got to was like on
awful.
The wrong side of the island. The power kept cutting out. There was no Wi-Fi. And we're like, this is not what Airbnb said.
Yeah.
You know, like
we had meetings at 10 a.m. the next day, and we'd been flying like on various different flights that day to get there. So
and then same thing happened in Johor Bahru, which was just outside of Singapore. And we didn't realize that you cross the border effectively into Malaysia. And there's this little place called Johor Bahru, which is like a rural / student area where like young professionals live, and then they travel into Singapore for work because it's cheaper. And there's nothing there. Like there was this, and we got this place that looked really nice online. We got there and there was nothing.
It's a building in the middle of all this land and trees, and that's it.
and we were like, what? And so you're going through these experiences, and you have clients, you know, like you still are responsible for driving revenue in the next quarter. And like, I think if the relationship wasn't solid, if it wasn't certain, then I don't think we could have done it.
Yeah. And I think that that's true for everybody. Like one of the things that's really beautiful about having a really solid and certain relationship is that you can take the level of uncertainty that you might have in your relationship and put it somewhere else, like in business or your career or whatever it is that you're doing. And I'd much rather have that uncertainty in one of those areas and take those risks than have to have it in our relationship. You know, I love that I get to come home and this is my safe space, you know.
That's such a beautiful way to reflect on your relationship and what you've built in your life. I'd love to go back and go, so obviously you were, you know, a period of time into your relationship where you were like, all right, we're going to pack everything up and we're going to head overseas and we're going to, you know, live wherever we kind of want for the next period of time. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I guess, that conversation and how you even made that shift from being, you know, in one place to deciding that you were going to move around?
That was interesting.
Well, I said to Donna early, like within the first 4 weeks of dating, here's my plan. Like, I'm going to go live in Southeast Asia. Yeah, and I want you to come with me. And that was kind of, and if you're not open to that, then this is not going to work. But if you are open to that, we can put some things in place to try and make that happen. And so right from the get-go, Donna kind of knew what my plan was. Like, there was no kind of like, oh, I'm dating a guy and then all of a sudden he wants to live in Southeast Asia. I had a timeline.
Surprise!
Yeah, surprise. I was like, I had a timeline. It was about 3 years. I wanted to be out. That's
I had the same sort of thing. Like, I wanted to as well. But at the time when we met, I just started my business. So I was like, I was in my business and in my job. And there was an element of like pressure. I don't know if I can make this happen. Like, you know, this man that I really like wants to go and do this, and I want to go do this, like regardless of whether I met him.
Like, I could have gone like straight away because I had the money,
and
the clients, and Donna was like, she probably would have stayed a year longer to prep her business. Is that fair?
No, because remember how it happened? We were sitting on the couch one day. It was a Sunday afternoon, and we'd been debating over like whether to go or whether not to go. And Caleb had started getting itchy feet. We were probably about a year and a half into our relationship at this point, and Caleb had started to get itchy feet. And so he started going away a lot more. And he's like, babe, I just need to go do this. And I was like, yep, cool. I'm not going to stop you. Like, I get it. We're only here because of me at this point in time. And then I just got really sick of my job. I was just so over it. And so we're sitting there one Sunday afternoon just looking at accommodation in Bali. And I started off with like, let's just see how much we're going to be up for. And then literally like an hour later, I was like, hey, babe, let's just buy it, stuff it. So we kind of just on the spur of a moment booked it in the afternoon after talking about it for a good 6 months.
Let's just do it. It's not going to cost us. If we can come back, if it doesn't work. And then that was it.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool though, but obviously you've done some work, both of you, to get your individual lives and businesses to a place where you had that freedom and flexibility to not be locked to a location. Can you tell us a little bit about like that? Was that always by design?
I was kind of nomadic. Like I moved over from New Zealand in 2016. And when I moved into Donna's place, it's hilarious. What I have, like, I had a suitcase. I showed up with a suitcase. And she's like, where's your stuff? And I was like, it's in my suitcase. And I'd been living in Australia for nearly a year and a half at this stage. And she's like, are you serious? I was like, yeah, it's all my stuff. It's in here. Like, I just didn't have anything. So when I left New Zealand, I was already kind of nomadic in the sense that I was just trying to live out of a suitcase. I didn't have a TV. I didn't have a bed. The places that I stayed in were furnished. And so, yeah, I was like, the plan was always, let's get out of Melbourne. I was so certain about getting, because I had to live it before, I became a parent or before I settled. I had to get it out of my system. So that was it for me. It was already geared that way. And then the whole purpose of my business was to find people that I could help and then create the income and the leverage to leave. That was the entire reason why I designed that first part of my business, which is interesting because that self-serving purpose made me hate my business about 18 months later. And so it had to shift again. And we can thank Kerry Marie for that because she was talking to us about purpose first, like
meaning.
Yes, self first meaning. So that's a whole other topic to talk about. But I was geared to go.
Yeah, so I always wanted the ability to like take my laptop down to a cafe or the beach or whatever. I didn't really care where it was. There were two purposes for me. One of them was I did want to do more travel. The other one was I'd see so many women like going to work all day and then they literally go straight from work, pick their kids up from after school care, and then they'd spend the rest of their night yelling at them, to go and have a bath, have dinner, do your homework, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, I don't want that. Like, I don't want to spend, when my kids come home from school the whole night yelling at them. I want to spend some time with them when that part of my life does come. So there was two parts of it for me. I love the ability to get up and go whenever I am. I'm a bit of a free spirit like that, but also, in terms of that next stage of life, I really want to be there for our family.
And I think, how we got there, like, Donna, you went part-time.
Yeah, I was full-time doing my business and my job at the time, and then I went part-time, and then I just took the leap and I went stuff it, and we booked the place in Bali and kind of just had to make it work, and it did. It worked out fine, like most things.
That real moment of like, all right, I'm just going to back myself.
That's it.
And honestly, if I fall on my face, I'm going to trust that I have the ability to pick myself back up.
Yep.
That's it. Yeah. Like I had to kind of lean into what the worst case scenario was. And the worst case scenario was that it didn't work out and that we had to go back to Melbourne. That was the absolute worst. And I was like, well, it's either that or I don't go and I always live wondering. And the thought of just always living and wondering was way more painful than actually just taking the leap itself.
Yeah. So I'd love to know what do the two of you do to actively keep dating each other? You've got this beautiful relationship. What's going on to make it work like that?
So we have a set of unwritten ground rules that I think are really important in the sense that one of them is we never yell or swear at each other. It's kind of like unwritten ground rule number one.
Yeah, so it's never yell or swear at each other. It's never threatened to leave the relationship ever.
Yeah.
If you were going to threaten to leave the relationship, it would be because you're actually feeling that that's seriously where you want to be at. It's not just a moment of I'm feeling frustrated at you or something like that. It literally, there's never ever threatening
So,
that.
like, early on when we were practicing this, like, I wasn't very good at communicating how I was feeling, so I just stonewall. So, like, some guys listening to this might be familiar. Where, like, you don't know what to say, but you don't want to say anything bad, so you just say nothing. And so I just go like stone cold, and then she'd be like, "You're impossible to be around at the moment because, like, we can't even communicate." So it started off like, because in those moments, traditionally, I'm a runner, so I just piss off and I'd be like, "Yeah, see ya, bye," which was a behavior that I vowed at the start of our relationship to never do. So I'd be mad, have no idea how to communicate what I'm feeling, but I'd never fucking leave. I'd be sitting in our apartment, which is a shoebox, a miserable fuck, and just sitting there going until I could figure out what it was or enough time had passed to express it. And then eventually that turned into being able to actually articulate our feelings. Because, if you hadn't left long enough, if you had consistency in your behavior of staying, then it created a sense of safety for your relationship to know that even if the shit was hitting the fan, we still are here. Like, there's still physical presence. Even though we can't communicate at the moment, because we're not very good at that, I'm still here. And I'm still fighting for the relationship, but I just don't know how to say it. And so I think the physical presence, especially as a masculine man, like, part of your role is, even if you don't know how you're feeling, just don't leave. Like, you can't screw anything up if you just don't leave. It's the leaving that triggers the feminine response of like, fuck, he's going to leave me, I'm going to be abandoned. Like, and it triggers all the emotional stuff that's even harder to deal with. So as a masculine man, if you don't know what to say, just don't leave. Just have physical proximity until you have the space to figure out what you are actually feeling. And I think that was part of our unwritten ground rules that, like, we don't even really think about it anymore. But when we started, that was it. Was there any
I
others?
think as well, if you are going to leave, it's not a matter of like, I'm leaving, I'm out of here. It's, you know what, babe, like, I feel that I can't really communicate what it is, or it hasn't even landed for me how I'm feeling about this right now. So I'm going to go away and think about it. Let's, touch on this in a couple of hours or something like that. I'm going to go have a coffee or something. And, that's worked for us really, really well, where it's felt like something that, sometimes you just need that. For men, cave time, or for women, we don't have the cave time as such, but we still do need some time sometimes for things to land. And that's been really helpful for us.
There's a show of ours, How I Met Your Mother. I don't know if anyone's seen this, but there's an episode, where they talk about pushing pause. So Lily and Marshall, some of the main characters, whenever they have a fight, they just yell pause. And pause is like, park the argument, go do what needs to be done, and then come back and unpause.
Have a pizza.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, what it is. If you mutually agree, you're like, I don't want to fight at the moment. I don't know how to resolve it. Can we pause? And, as a man, you actually need what we call cave time, which is like the ability to just sit with your thoughts, to articulate them yourself. And this is a whole another topic, but the difference between men and women is men want to be appreciated and women want to be understood. And so in these moments of conflict, the feminine energy is going to be very much like coming at you with all these different things that they want you to understand. And the masculine just needs to isolate for a little bit and just be like, okay, so what are my thoughts? What are her thoughts? And then just put them all in little neat, tidy boxes, and then go back and be like, okay, these are the things that I found. Here are my thoughts. But the feminine, it's like a hurricane, right? It's like, it comes in and it's like, whoosh, and it's like blowing all your boxes up, and you're like, this is why we can't communicate, especially if feelings are foreign, like, I'm triggered, or I'm hurt, or I feel lost, or I feel betrayed. Like, if you don't know how to language your feelings, it's going to be really difficult with the hurricane going on to put all your stuff in the boxes.
I'm the hurricane.
Well,
the hurricane going
But I guess it is really critical what you said, that it is, I guess, about communicating what you're doing, though. Like, if you do need your space and you do need to leave and go down to the cafe and have a coffee and sit and work through your thoughts, that But I guess you do communicate that up front rather than just bailing and then the other person feeling like you've just left them and abandoned them. So.
Yeah, and sometimes those like simple things are not always easy to do. Hey, when there's two people who's are triggering and, you know, misfiring at each other and not really sure how to, it's so easy to grab the keys and just walk out the door and be like, fuck, I can't deal with this right now. But I think it is like that practiced muscle, I guess, to be like, babe, I really can't handle this right now, and communicating, I'm going to step away because this is how I'm worried I'm going to do or say something that I don't want to do or say. But yeah, I think that's a really nice unwritten rule that you've got in your relationship. Is there anything else that you do to, I guess, create that love and romance and that, you know, really fueled up sort of feeling?
One of the things that kind of just come to mind as well as you were talking was we always think that the other person has our best interests at heart. So when you can always live in that space, even if you're angry or if things are going well, whatever it might be, if you can always be in that space of like, that person has my best interests at heart, they're not trying to, you know, be a certain way or whatever, then it allows for forgiveness, compassion, love, all of those things to open up. It allows you to see what's happening from their perspective and, you know, to almost kind of go, okay, well, if they're feeling like this and I'm responding like this, you know, what's my part in this? And, you know, how can I respond and meet them halfway? Or, you know, it allows more kind of opening up of the gates for newer conversations to happen. And I think that that's something that we do really, really well.
Yeah, so one of the rules that we encourage couples to have is the relationship comes first, right? And this is the person that you've chosen. So if you're going to work on your relationship, you have to make the commitment that you are in. It's a line in the sand, and there's no turning back now. If you decide that you want to work on your relationship, nothing beyond that line is now acceptable or can be dragged in front of the line. So before you draw the line, get all your shit out on the table first, because once you draw that line, you are not allowed to be like, oh, but remember on my 15th birthday when you didn't do that thing and you didn't get me that? Like, once that line is drawn, none of that shit happens. And so I think that was, you know, it's like once that line is drawn, you choose the relationship always. And through choosing the relationship, you also accept that if this person is trying to communicate with you, then they're trying to communicate with you because they love you, not because they're trying to hurt you. And so we see this in couples all the time where like someone goes to express something and then the other one's like, oh, fuck you. You know, you're going to leave me. Like, no, they're talking to you because they love you and because they want to stay. And that's really fascinating. But you just have to choose the other person first. And always assuming that when they're talking to you, they're trying to convey love. They don't know how.
It's about always assuming positive intent.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And like in terms of practical stuff that we do, like we haven't actually done this in a while. It's pretty naughty, but we nominate like a Saturday or a Sunday weekly where we'll like lie in bed or we'll watch movies, or it's just us time. So phones aside, and you know, you probably heard this a million times, but we just nominate a day and we have date nights. As a general rule of thumb, they're either weekly, worst case, they're fortnightly.
No, they're pretty much always weekly. I don't remember the last time we've not had one.
Yeah. And so we it's like dinner or movies, or it's not the quantity, it's the quality. So it's like the presence of being together. It's not, you know, we've done date night now and the box is ticked. It's like, and because all the men are like, yeah, but I do date night all the time. It's not ticking the box. It's about the presence that you're there. And most masculine men have an issue with presence. So say, for example, you come home from work's been really stressful, and immediately you come home, the kids run the door and they're like, hey, or like your partner's like, hey, and then you're still in work box, you know, like you're still like trying to process this. And then, you know, she wants you to be present with her, and then you're in both rooms at the same time. And then she talks to you later. She's like, you're never present. And you're like, but I'm here. Like I'm physically here, but that's not what they're talking about. What they're talking about is emotional presence of where your sole focus is on that person. And what you sort of need to understand is like you might actually need a little bit of time to focus and shift, or one of my clients called it defragging. So like having a 2-minute 2 minutes in the car before you enter the house, or on the train ride home, or something to just consolidate your thoughts and then direct presence to your partner. Yeah. And this is, beyond just having a date night, it's choosing a day where on that night or on that evening or in that allocated time, your mental presence and emotional presence is in that space. It's in that moment. It's not in workroom. You park it for 2 hours. It's not in friend's room. You park that for 2 hours. In that moment, it is 100% for your partner.
So what is one tip from each of you that you would really recommend for early stage couples to really set some great foundations?
I would have to say it's around communication. Just be willing to have those what feel like risky conversations. So like within, I think that was our third date, we discussed how many kids we want to have because we just were like, you know what, stuff it, we're in. And we had this mentality of like, either you're going to like it, you're not going to like it. And if you don't, you're probably not for me, and that's fine. Like we were over the games. And I think that communication has just been so key to getting us to where we are now, just facing all the risky conversations, or what feel like risky conversations. Yeah. And I say that as like what feel like, because I don't think that they are, because they actually build more intimacy the more you're willing to lean into them.
And it reduces risk down the future as
That's
well.
That's it, yeah.
Down the track.
And if you want a deeper, intimate relationship, it doesn't start with sex, it starts with communication. Talk about the shit that scares you. Talk about the stuff that you want. Like that'll build intimacy before anything else. That's been the thing that's kept us. We like to describe it like a couple bubble. So, within this bubble, it's just us, and we vow never to kick the other person out, and to always assume the best, and to keep the couple bubble sacred. No matter what happens, that other person feels like you 100% have their back all the time. If you had to move a body, that would be the person that you call. Like that's, that's
ride or die.
Yeah, that's it. It's your ride or die. So I think, that's one thing. I think the second thing would be it's an extension of that. It's like, what do you want? And I was watching the Tony Robbins I'm Not Your Guru movie, and he spends a whole day at Date with Destiny on relationships. And he says, what's the vision for your relationship? And he makes a joke, and he's like, most people are like, oh yeah, eat, drink, fuck. That's the vision of my relationship. What are you talking about? And it's like, well, what do you actually want? Seriously, what is this relationship for? What are you creating? Because the best relationship has a vision, and you have two people working at the vision, and it happens in half the time. And that's what we feel like with a lot of our goals is it's a singular goal, and it's going to happen twice as fast because there's two of us on the same team, rather than two different visions heading in different directions. And you don't have time to waste. Like if you're listening to this and you're in that stage, you're already curious about personal development. Yeah. So you already are self-aware enough to know that these are the conversations that you need to have. The other thing you need to remember is you don't have time. You don't have time to go 3 years into a relationship at surface to find out something about someone that is a deal breaker. Because you'll spend the next 2 years grieving and then the next year finding someone else. Like at this stage, you don't have time. So it's time to ditch the games. It's time to ditch I'm scared of being vulnerable, because it will stack up and it will go fast, and you will end up alone because you were too scared to say what you actually wanted. Or worse, you'll end up in a relationship where you wake up one day and you'll be like, what have I done?
Yeah, this isn't what I wanted.
Yeah, this is not the life I wanted. And now you have kids. You've been together 20 years and it's messy and it's complicated because you didn't have these conversations now.
Not to mention, like, I think for us having those conversations so early, we've been together for 3.5 years. And in that 3.5 years, we have done so much things. Like, I feel like we've fit what some people would fit in 10 years within 3 years' time, because we've just been really clear about what it is that we want, and we just back each other 100%. We're like, yep, let's just go for it. And it allows, like I said earlier, it allows for so much more risk-taking and adventure and excitement in your relationship by, having that kind of, let's not waste time, let's just get straight to it and, enjoy our lives.
I think that must come back to the two of you working so deliberately and intentionally to get clear about what it is that you're doing and where you're going, because then you do spend your time, money and energy so intentionally, and there's no, wastage on any of those things because it's so thoughtfully pursued. Yeah.
We had a relationship coach for 18 months. I think that's my other tip would be get help.
Yeah.
Like, you will play out the patterns of your parents. Like, I've studied enough human behavior to know that people are irrationally predictable, and you will play out the exact dynamic your parents had. So if your parents had a shit relationship, that's where you're heading. So get help and end that baggage, right? Or if they had a wonderful relationship, incredible, that's where you're heading. But you will operate in a relationship with the tools that you were taught and given. And if they are not great tools, upskill, get help. We did. It was the best thing we ever fucking did. They couldn't solve our relationship for us, but our coach gave us the tools to be able to navigate all of the things that we navigated in the last, 3 years together. It was the best thing we ever did. And we'll take that.
Solid advice.
Yeah, we'll take that forward for the rest of our lives. These tools that we didn't have that now we have.
And if I could just add to that, I know for myself, Caleb came from a family that has a very solid family unit and they have a really good relationship. Whereas for me, I have never in my life, up until our relationship and all the work that we've done, seen a healthy relationship. I didn't know what that was. I saw it on TV and I was like, oh no, that just happens to those people on TV because they're on TV and it's not real. I didn't believe previous to meeting Caleb and doing all of this work that I could actually be this happy and this solid in a relationship. And, I guess that kind of follows on with what Caleb was saying, because we have the right tools and because we've done a lot of that internal work with our own relationship coach, now we know how to communicate with each other. Whereas previously I may have been communicating, some of my family values from what I was taught, basically.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Donna, too, because that was one of the reasons that we wanted to start Fuel Collective and the Date Forever podcast was, if you've not ever seen a healthy, happy, thriving relationship, where are you meant to learn it? You've got to go out and seek opportunities to learn and upskill and develop some of these, things that come from self-awareness and growth and values. If you've not seen it, you're starting from, you're trying to paint a picture without anything to work from.
Yeah, without the tools.
Without the tools. So I want to say thank you so much for letting us have a little peek behind the curtains. One of our values at Fuel Collective is to be the change. And that's really about what we're saying is about being the change that you want to see in your own life and taking full accountability for what you can do to impact your own life, but also for the change that you want to see in the world. So to say thank you for joining us today, we've given a year's worth of seeds to help a family grow some nourishing food in Malawi. So that project's supported by Every Home Global Concern, and we've done that via our partnership with Buy One, Give One. So thank you so much for making that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How good is Buy One, Give One? That's such a cool initiative.
Yeah.
It's really, really awesome. So because we were here, because you guys listened, a village.
Something awesome is happening.
Yeah, something awesome is happening. That's so cool.
So if people have loved what you've been sharing today or want to learn a bit more about your individual businesses, how should they best connect with you?
Probably on our social media, I would say, is the best place to find us. So for myself, Donna Lesa.
And Caleb Lesa. I got a new fancy website coming shortly. So hopefully by the time you watch this, it'll be there. But caleblesa.com.au. You can find out
the links in the show notes.
Yeah,
perfect.
Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.